Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast where we dive deep into the beautiful rhythm of everyday moments. And honestly, I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here listening with me today. Before we get started, if you enjoy relaxing English podcast episodes like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out our podcast playlist for many more videos designed to help you improve your English naturally while enjoying meaningful conversations and stories. My name is Lilly, and for the past several years, I've been really passionate about helping people understand that your daily routine isn't just a checklist of mundane tasks you need to complete. It's actually a beautiful collection of moments, habits, and rituals that shape who you are as a person. And today, I want to take you on a journey through my entire day. From the very first moment I open my eyes in the morning to the exact second my head hits the pillow at night, we're going to explore every single aspect of what my life looks like. Whether you're someone who's curious about how other people structure their days, or maybe you're looking to redesign your own routine to feel more intentional and purposeful, this episode is definitely going to speak to you. I'm going to share not just the basic actions I do, but also the thoughts, feelings, and motivations behind each decision I make throughout my day, because I truly believe that understanding the why behind your routine is just as important as knowing the what. So grab yourself a warm beverage, get comfortable wherever you are right now, and let's dive into what a typical Thursday looks like in my world. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, which is always the first moment of consciousness when I wake up. And I have to tell you, I'm someone who's incredibly intentional about my morning routine. My alarm goes off at 6:45 in the morning, and here's the thing that most people don't realize. The way you start your morning actually sets the emotional tone for your entire day, like it's genuinely that powerful. So instead of immediately jumping out of bed and checking my phone for messages and notifications, which used to be my old habit that made me feel anxious and rushed, I now spend about 3 to 5 minutes just lying in bed doing some really gentle stretches. I'll stretch my neck slowly from side to side. Then I'll rotate my shoulders backward and forward, and I'll bring my knees up to my chest while still lying down to get a gentle stretch through my lower back and hip flexors, which is such a good way to wake up my body. During these stretches, I'm thinking about 3 things that I'm genuinely grateful for that are already in my life. And this practice has genuinely transformed my mindset so much that I wake up feeling positive rather than stressed. After those stretches, I finally get out of bed, but I do it slowly and deliberately, allowing my body to transition from sleep to wakefulness. And then I head directly to my bathroom without looking at my phone because I really want to protect that quiet mental space for as long as I possibly can. In my bathroom, the first thing I do is drink about 8 ounces of water with half a fresh lemon squeezed into it. And I do this before anything else because it helps hydrate my body after 8 hours of sleep and supports my digestive system. While I'm sipping on that lemon water, I look at myself in the mirror and I take a moment to acknowledge my reflection with kindness rather than criticism, which honestly used to be really hard for me, but has become such a powerful part of my morning ritual. Next, I wash my face with a gentle cleanser that's suited to my skin type, and I use my hands to apply it in upward motions across my face, which supposedly helps with maintaining skin elasticity, and then I rinse it with cool water to help wake up my skin and tighten my pores. I then pat my face dry with a clean towel, and I apply a moisturizer that I've chosen specifically because it has ingredients that are hydrating without feeling heavy or greasy on my skin, and I let that sink in for a moment. I brush my teeth for the full 2 minutes, which I actually time on my phone now, and I use a fluoride toothpaste that my dentist recommended, and I make sure to brush all surfaces of my teeth, including the back molars, which people often forget about completely. After brushing, I use a tongue scraper because my dentist suggested that it helps eliminate bacteria and improves oral health. And honestly, it's such a small thing, but it actually makes my mouth feel so much fresher throughout the day. Then comes my shower, which is honestly one of my absolute favorite parts of the morning routine because it's when I really feel like I'm washing away any heaviness from sleep and preparing my mind and body for the day ahead. I start by turning the water to a temperature that's warm but not super hot because very hot water can actually dry out your skin and make it less healthy in the long run. So I've learned to find that sweet spot that feels comfortable without being extreme. I begin by wetting my hair thoroughly, and then I apply a gentle shampoo that's designed specifically for my hair type, and I massage it into my scalp using my fingertips with circular motions for at least a minute to really work up a good lather. I rinse the shampoo out completely, making sure there's no residue left behind, and then I apply a nourishing conditioner to the middle and ends of my hair, and I let it sit while I move on to the rest of my body. I use a soft washcloth and a body cleanser that smells beautiful and makes me feel like I'm treating myself to something special. And I wash my entire body, starting from my neck and moving down toward my feet, making sure to give special attention to areas that tend to get dry or irritated. After about 5 minutes, I rinse the conditioner from my hair, again making sure it's completely removed, and then I do one final rinse of my entire body to feel fresh and clean. And at this point, I feel genuinely energized and ready to continue my morning. Now it's time to get dressed, and I have to say, this is something I've become much more intentional about over the past couple of years, because I used to just grab whatever was on top of the pile without really thinking about it, which often left me feeling frumpy and unmotivated. Nowadays, I actually think about what kind of day I have ahead of me and what would make me feel confident and comfortable, and I choose pieces that align with my mood and my plans, which genuinely impacts how I feel about myself throughout the day. Today, I'm putting on a soft gray sweater that's cozy and comfortable but still looks put together, and I'm pairing it with black jeans that fit well and make me feel confident in my body. And then I add a simple white sneaker that's comfortable for walking but still looks clean and intentional. I also choose my undergarments intentionally because wearing something that fits well and feels comfortable actually makes a huge difference in how you carry yourself throughout the day. And it's a small act of self-care that nobody else might see, but that you definitely feel. I look in the mirror at my complete outfit, and I make sure it feels authentic to who I am and the vibe I want to project. And then I grab my crossbody bag that I've already prepared the night before, with my keys, phone, and wallet inside. Before I leave my bedroom, I make my bed because something about starting my day with an already made bed waiting for me at night gives me this sense of accomplishment and order that I genuinely appreciate when I come home after a long day. Heading into my kitchen, I'm really excited about breakfast because I genuinely believe that eating a nutritious breakfast sets you up for better energy levels and mental clarity throughout the morning, and I've noticed this difference so clearly in my own life. Today, I'm preparing what I call my power breakfast, which consists of a bowl of steel-cut oats that I prepared the night before by soaking them in unsweetened almond milk with a pinch of cinnamon, and this overnight oat method makes them so creamy and delicious without any added sugar. I warm this up gently in a pot, stirring occasionally so it doesn't burn on the bottom, and while that's heating up, I'm slicing fresh strawberries and blueberries into a separate bowl, and I'm also toasting a small handful of almonds in a dry pan until they become fragrant and slightly golden brown. I pour the warmed oats into my favorite bowl, which happens to be a beautiful ceramic bowl with a glazed finish that my friend made, and I top it with the fresh berries and toasted almonds, and then I drizzle about a teaspoon of raw honey all over the top. I also make a cup of herbal tea, specifically a blend that has chamomile and lemon balm, because I find it to be calming yet energizing. And I let it steep for about 5 minutes while I take my breakfast to my little kitchen table where I have a window view of the neighborhood. As I eat, I'm doing something that I found to be really important. I'm eating slowly and mindfully, truly tasting each spoonful and not being distracted by my phone or any other screens. And this practice of mindful eating has genuinely changed my relationship with food in such a positive way. After breakfast, I clean up my dishes immediately by rinsing them and placing them in the dishwasher, and I find that doing this right away rather than letting them pile up in the sink actually sets a better tone for the rest of my home throughout the day. I head back to my bedroom and I do a final check of my appearance, making sure my hair is styled in a way that feels comfortable and good, and I apply a light amount of makeup that's really just me enhancing my natural features rather than covering them up completely. I put on a light jacket over my sweater because the weather forecast said it might be a bit chilly this morning, and I grab my carefully prepared crossbody bag that I've already packed with everything I need, including my laptop, charger, a water bottle, and a light snack for later. I take a moment to look around my apartment before I leave, and I mentally note that it's relatively tidy and organized, which gives me a nice sense of peace knowing that when I come home later, I won't be walking into chaos or mess that will add to my stress. I lock my door carefully, testing it twice to make sure it's actually locked, because I'm someone who sometimes worries about whether I lock the door, and I've learned that this quick double check actually gives me peace of mind and eliminates that anxious feeling I used to have throughout my morning. I head down the stairs, greeting my neighbor Mrs. Chen if I happen to see her, and today she's watering her flowers on the landing, so I stop for a quick chat and ask her how her garden is doing, which is such a small human connection, but honestly makes my morning feel more connected to community. My commute to work is about 25 minutes by public transportation, and I've actually learned to really appreciate this time rather than see it as wasted time that I need to optimize or fill with productivity. I wait at the bus stop, and while I'm waiting, I might read a few pages of whatever book I'm currently reading, or I might just people watch and observe the world around me. Or sometimes I'll listen to a podcast that I'm interested in. And the key is that I give myself permission to choose based on what my brain needs in that particular moment. When the bus arrives, I find a seat if one's available, and I settle in with my book or my phone. And I've noticed that the ride actually feels shorter when I'm genuinely engaged in something I'm interested in, rather than anxiously watching the minutes tick by. The bus winds through several neighborhoods that I've gotten to know pretty well over the months and years of taking this route, and I often notice little changes, like a new mural on a wall or a shop closing and a new one opening, and these small observations keep my mind engaged during the commute. About halfway through my ride, I pull out my reusable water bottle and I take several sips because staying hydrated is something I'm really conscious about. And I notice that when I drink enough water throughout my morning, I feel so much better energy-wise and mentally. As the bus approaches my stop, I start gathering my things so I'm ready to exit quickly without scrambling at the last second. And I've gotten pretty good at this timing over the many months I've been taking the same route to the same office. I exit the bus at my stop and I walk about 3 blocks to the office building where I work. And I actually enjoy this short walk because it gives me a transition time between my commute and being at work. And I use these few minutes to mentally prepare myself for the day ahead. The building where I work is a nice modern structure with big glass windows and a comfortable lobby area. And I greet the security guard at the desk because he's such a kind person, and I genuinely appreciate acknowledging him as I pass through each day. I take the elevator up to the fourth floor where my office is located, and I use these elevator moments to take a deep breath and center myself before I step into my workspace and start engaging with colleagues and tasks. When I arrive at my desk, the first thing I do is set up my workspace in a way that feels organized and intentional, and I'll adjust my chair to the proper height, position my monitor at eye level so I'm not straining my neck, and arrange my keyboard and mouse in an ergonomic way. I open my laptop and allow it to boot up while I'm getting my other materials organized, and I place my water bottle within arm's reach so I can continue to hydrate throughout the morning without having to get up frequently. Once my computer is ready, I check my email inbox to see if there are any urgent messages from colleagues or clients that I need to address right away, and I quickly scan through to prioritize what needs my attention first versus what can wait until later in the day. For the first couple of hours of my workday, I focus on tasks that require deep concentration and creative thinking, and I've learned that my brain is most capable of handling complex problems in these early morning hours before I've had too many distractions and interruptions. I might be working on a project that requires me to analyze data or create a presentation or write content that needs to be really thoughtful and well-structured, and I found that dedicating this morning block of time to my most important work tasks yields the best quality results. Every 30 minutes or so, I take a short break where I stand up and stretch for about 2 minutes. And I've learned that these micro breaks actually improve my focus and productivity rather than interrupt it, because they give my brain a chance to reset and my body a chance to move. Around 11 o'clock, I might grab a quick snack from the break room, which might be a handful of nuts or some fruit or a granola bar, and I pair this with another glass of water because I'm really committed to keeping my energy and hydration levels consistent throughout the day. I also take this break as an opportunity to step away from my desk and maybe chat briefly with a colleague about something non-work related, because these small social interactions throughout the day are actually really important for maintaining my mental health and feeling connected to the people I work with. By about 11:30, I've usually completed my most important task of the morning, and this gives me a great sense of accomplishment and momentum as I move into the late morning part of my workday. From about noon until around 1 o'clock, I typically have 1 or 2 meetings scheduled, and I've learned to be really intentional about how I prepare for and participate in these meetings because they're a significant part of my workday. Before a meeting starts, I make sure I've reviewed any relevant materials or agendas so I can come prepared with thoughts or questions or context. And I've noticed that this preparation makes me feel much more confident and capable of contributing meaningfully to the conversation. During meetings, I try to be an active listener rather than someone who's just waiting for my turn to talk or thinking about what I'm going to say next, and I take notes about important points that are discussed so I can reference them later if needed. I also make sure that if I'm contributing an idea or opinion, I'm doing so in a way that's respectful and collaborative rather than dismissive or competitive, because I genuinely believe that the best ideas come from people working together rather than against each other. If the meeting ends early, I don't immediately jump back into another task because I've learned that transitions are important, and I'll take a few minutes to stretch, refill my water, or step outside for some fresh air to reset my brain before diving into the next thing. Meetings can be mentally exhausting even when they're productive, and I've become much better at acknowledging that fact and giving myself grace rather than pushing through without a transition period. By around 1:15, it's time for my lunch break, And this is something I've become really committed to taking fully rather than eating at my desk while continuing to work, which is something I used to do frequently and which left me feeling burnt out. I grab my lunch, which I've prepared at home and brought from home in a glass container, and today it's a really satisfying bowl with grilled chicken breast, roasted vegetables, including broccoli and bell peppers, and a base of brown rice with a light vinaigrette dressing. I head to the break room and I find a comfortable spot where I can sit and really focus on eating and enjoying my lunch. And I've learned that taking this time to actually step away from my desk and disconnect from work tasks is genuinely restorative for my mental health and energy levels. While I'm eating, I might chat with coworkers if they're in the break room, or I might use it as quiet time to read something enjoyable, or look out the window and just observe the street below, where I can see people walking and going about their own lives. I eat slowly and mindfully, really tasting the flavors of my food and noticing the different textures and temperatures. And I find that this mindful eating approach makes my lunch feel like a true break and rest period, rather than just refueling my body. After I finish eating, I take a moment to clean up my containers and put them in the sink to rinse, and I do a mental check-in with myself about how I'm feeling physically and emotionally at this midpoint of my workday. After lunch, I head back to my desk and I have a quick moment to assess what I need to accomplish in the afternoon portion of my workday, and I've learned that having a clear plan helps me feel more organized and less scattered. After lunch, I head back to my desk and I have a quick moment to assess what I need to accomplish in the afternoon portion of my workday, and I've learned that having a clear plan helps me feel more organized and less scattered. I'm usually less capable of doing really deep creative work in the afternoon, so I save my afternoon time for tasks that are more collaborative, administrative, or that involve problem solving with other people rather than independent focused work. I take another short break around 3 o'clock, and I've noticed that this mid-afternoon break is really important for maintaining my energy because this is often when I start to feel a slight energy dip if I don't intentionally refuel. I might grab a cup of tea or coffee at this point, and I'll pair it with a light snack like some fruit or a piece of dark chocolate, and this small pickling up is enough to lift my energy level and mental clarity for the final couple of hours of work. I also use this break to step outside the building if the weather is nice, and I'll take a 5 or 10-minute walk around the block. And this exposure to fresh air and natural movement is honestly so restorative for my mind and body. From about 3:30 until the end of my workday around 5 o'clock, I'm mostly focused on wrapping up any ongoing projects, responding to emails that have come in throughout the day, and preparing my workspace for the next day. I like to end my workday by creating a quick to-do list for the following day because I've found that when I do this, I can mentally leave work behind me and not spend my evening thinking about everything I need to do tomorrow. This final half hour of my workday is much more about closing loops and organizing rather than starting anything new because I've learned that this approach helps me have a cleaner transition from work mode to evening mode. I also do a final check of my email to make sure there's nothing urgent that needs my attention before I leave, and I respond to a few things if they're quick and easy, but I try not to take on any big new tasks in these final moments of the day. Around 4:55, I start shutting down my laptop and gathering my things, and I do a final tidy of my desk so that it's organized and ready for me when I arrive the next morning. I make sure all my work materials are in my bag or put away appropriately, and I take a moment to acknowledge that I've completed another productive day and to feel a sense of accomplishment about what I've achieved. My commute home from work is about the same 25 minutes on public transportation, and I find that this return journey feels very different from my morning commute because my brain is in a completely different mode. In the morning, I was preparing myself to focus and work, but in the afternoon, I'm transitioning from work mode back into my personal life, and I use this commute time to help make that shift mentally and emotionally. I might listen to music that I find relaxing or uplifting, and I've created a specific playlist that I listen to on my commute home because I found that certain music helps me shake off the stress of the workday and transition into a more relaxed state. Or I might use this time to call a friend or family member and catch up about their day. And these quick connections during my commute actually help me feel more connected and less isolated, even though I've been around people all day at work. Sometimes I just people watch and observe the world around me, and I notice details about other passengers and the neighborhoods we pass through, and this kind of mindless observation is actually really calming for my overworked brain. As the bus approaches my stop, I prepare myself to exit by gathering my belongings and moving toward the door, and I step out onto the street feeling genuinely ready to transition into my evening and personal life. When I arrive home, the first thing I do is take off my shoes and change out of my work clothes into something much more comfortable and casual. And this change of clothes is almost like a physical ritual that signals to my brain that I'm now in personal time rather than work time. I'll put on comfortable pants or leggings and a soft t-shirt or sweater, and I'll change into my house slippers. And there's something so grounding about this ritual that I honestly look forward to it during my workday. I take a moment to look around my apartment and assess what needs to be done before I can really settle into my evening. And I do a quick tidying if dishes have accumulated or there are things out of place, because I find that a clean, organized space allows me to relax more fully. I open some windows if the weather is nice to let fresh air circulate through my apartment, and I might light a candle or turn on a small lamp if it's getting dark outside. And these environmental details actually make such a difference in how my space feels. I prepare myself a beverage, which might be herbal tea or a glass of water with lemon, or sometimes a glass of wine if I'm in the mood for it, and I settle onto my couch with my drink and take a moment to just breathe and be present. This transition period is really important for me because it allows me to fully leave work behind and settle into my personal time rather than carrying work stress into my evening. And I've noticed that protecting this transition period improves my overall well-being so much. By around 6:15, I'm thinking about what I want to prepare for dinner, and I've actually found that planning meals ahead of time makes this process so much smoother and less stressful than deciding on the fly when I'm hungry and tired. I typically plan my meals for the week on Sunday when I have more time and mental energy, and I've already done my grocery shopping, so I have all the ingredients I need on hand to prepare something nutritious and delicious. Today, I'm planning to make a stir-fry with vegetables and tofu, and I start by pulling out a cutting board and preparing my vegetables, which means washing them and chopping them into appropriately sized pieces. I'm cutting bell peppers into strips, chopping broccoli into florets, slicing mushrooms, and peeling and mincing some fresh garlic, and I find that this prep work is actually quite meditative for me and helps me transition from my workday into evening mode. While my vegetables are being prepped, I'll also prepare my tofu by pressing it between paper towels to remove excess moisture, and I'll cube it into pieces that will cook evenly in my pan. I heat a bit of sesame oil in a large pan or wok, and as soon as the oil is hot, I add my aromatics like the minced garlic and some fresh ginger, and the smell of these cooking is absolutely wonderful and fills my apartment with such a pleasant aroma. Once my aromatics have cooked for about a minute and are fragrant, I add my cubed tofu to the pan and I let it cook until the edges are golden and slightly crispy, which takes about 5 to 7 minutes. And during this time, I'm stirring occasionally to make sure it cooks evenly. After the tofu has started to develop some color, I add my harder vegetables first, like the broccoli and bell peppers, and I stir-fry these for about 5 minutes until they're starting to soften but still have a bit of crunch to them. Then I add my softer vegetables like mushrooms, and I continue to stir and cook for another couple of minutes, and the whole stir-fry is coming together beautifully with all the colors and aromas combining. I add a sauce that I've made by combining low-sodium soy sauce, a bit of rice vinegar, some honey, sesame oil, and a pinch of red pepper flakes, and I pour this over my vegetables and tofu and toss everything to coat evenly. I add a sauce that I've made by combining low-sodium soy sauce, a bit of rice vinegar, some honey, sesame oil, and a pinch of red pepper flakes, and I pour this over my vegetables and tofu and toss everything to coat evenly. The entire cooking process takes about 20 minutes from start to finish, and I feel such satisfaction in having prepared a delicious, nutritious meal that I know is going to nourish my body and taste wonderful. I plate up my stir-fry in a large bowl, and I take it to my living room where I can sit comfortably. And I've actually learned that eating at my table or on my couch, rather than at my desk or standing up, makes my meals feel more intentional and enjoyable. I'm eating slowly and thoughtfully, really tasting the flavors and enjoying the combination of the vegetables, tofu, and the sauce. And the rice or noodles underneath provide a satisfying base that rounds out the meal perfectly. While I'm eating, I might watch something light and enjoyable, like a comedy show or a travel documentary, and I'm careful to choose something that's entertaining, but not so intense or upsetting that it brings stress into my evening. I'm being mindful of my portion size and stopping when I feel satisfied rather than when I'm completely full, and I found that this intuitive approach to eating has helped me feel so much better physically and has actually improved my relationship with food. After I finish eating, I take my dishes to the sink and I rinse them and load them into the dishwasher, and I wipe down my dining area or table, and I find that these small acts of tidying as I go prevent my space from getting too messy or cluttered. I might prepare a small snack for later if I think I'll want something before bed, but if I'm not hungry, I simply leave the kitchen clean and organized for the evening. After dinner, I have some discretionary time before I need to start preparing for bed, and I've become much more intentional about how I spend this time because I used to just default to scrolling on my phone or mindlessly watching TV for hours. Tonight, I'm going to spend some of this time reading, which is one of my favorite forms of relaxation, and I'll settle onto my couch with my book and a blanket, and I'll read for about an hour while sipping on a cup of herbal tea. Reading allows my brain to engage in a creative way without being overstimulating like social media can be, and I find that reading before bed actually helps me fall asleep more easily because it allows my mind to focus on a narrative rather than racing through thoughts about my day. I'm currently reading a fiction novel that's engaging and well-written, and I'm really looking forward to finding out what happens next. And I read at my own pace without worrying about how many pages I'm getting through. Sometimes, instead of reading, I might do some light stretching or yoga, and I have a few favorite sequences that help release tension from my body, especially in my neck and shoulders, which tend to get tight from sitting at a desk all day. Or I might journal for a bit, writing down thoughts or observations or gratitude about my day. And this practice of reflection has been really valuable for my mental health and self-awareness. Depending on my mood and energy level, I might also spend some evening time on a creative hobby that brings me joy. And for me, this is often painting or sketching or sometimes working on a craft project. I have a small art space in my apartment where I keep my supplies, and I'll set up my easel or sketch pad and just allow myself to create without any pressure or expectation for the result to be perfect or polished. The process of creating something with my hands is so grounding and meditative for me, and it allows me to express myself in a way that's different from writing or verbal communication. I might work on a painting for anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how into it I'm feeling, and I don't set a timer or pressure myself to finish anything. I just allow myself to explore colors and shapes and see what emerges. Sometimes I'll put on music while I'm creating, and sometimes I prefer silence, and I've learned to tune in to what my brain and body need in that particular evening. The goal of these creative pursuits is not to produce something gallery-worthy, it's to give myself an outlet for self-expression and to do something that feels purely enjoyable rather than productive in a practical sense. Around 9:45 or 10 o'clock, depending on how much time I've spent on reading or creative pursuits, I start to wind down my evening and prepare myself for bed. And I've really learned the importance of having a wind-down routine that signals to my body and brain that sleep is coming. I first tidy up any spaces I've been using during the evening, so I'll put my book away or clean up my art supplies, and I'll do a final quick tidy of my living room so it feels calm and organized before I sleep. I head to my bedroom and I lay out my clothing for the next day so that my morning routine is streamlined, and I found that doing this the night before actually saves me time and mental energy in the morning. I set my alarm for my desired wake-up time, which is usually around 6:45, and I put my phone on silent and place it across the room from my bed so that I'm not tempted to check it once I'm already in bed. I then head to my bathroom to complete my evening hygiene routine, and I start by washing my face with the same gentle cleanser I used in the morning, and I take a moment to look at my skin and apply any targeted treatments if needed. I brush my teeth again thoroughly for 2 minutes, and I use a gentle floss to clean between my teeth. And I find that this evening routine helps me feel fresh and clean as I prepare to sleep. After my bathroom routine, I change into my pajamas, which are soft and comfortable and specifically designated for sleeping. And I find that having a distinct change of clothes for sleep helps my brain recognize the transition into bedtime mode. I might apply a light moisturizer or lip balm, and I'll apply an eye cream if my eyes are feeling dry, and these small acts of self-care make me feel nurtured and cared for as I'm preparing to sleep. I get into bed and I adjust my pillows and blankets until I feel comfortable and cozy. And I've learned that having comfortable bedding is actually really important for sleep quality, so I invested in high-quality pillows and sheets. I might spend a few minutes doing some gentle stretching or breathing exercises in bed, and I found that taking about 10 deep breaths and exhaling slowly really helps calm my nervous system and prepare my body for sleep. If my mind is racing with thoughts about my day or things I need to do, I'll spend a few minutes doing a body scan meditation where I mentally move through each part of my body and consciously relax it. And this practice has been life-changing for my sleep quality. Sometimes I listen to a guided meditation or a sleep story through an audio app, and the sound of a calm voice speaking in a soothing tone really helps me transition from wakefulness to sleep. By about 10:45, I'm usually feeling quite sleepy and ready to drift off to sleep, and I found that when I follow my evening wind-down routine consistently, falling asleep is much easier and more natural than when I skip these steps. Before I fully surrender to sleep, I often spend a few moments reflecting on my day and thinking about 3 things I'm grateful for, even if they're small things. And this gratitude practice has genuinely shifted my overall mindset and sense of well-being. I might also reflect on something I learned that day or a positive interaction I had with someone, and this practice of acknowledging the good things that happened helps my brain focus on positive memories rather than stress or regrets. I then allow myself to let go of the day and surrender to sleep, trusting that tomorrow will bring new opportunities and moments, and I find that this attitude of letting go actually helps me fall asleep more easily. My sleep is usually quite deep and restorative because my body is genuinely tired from a full day of activity and my mind is calm from my wind-down routine, and I typically sleep through the night without much disruption. And then, before I know it, my alarm is going off again at 6:45 in the morning, and I wake up ready to begin another day of living my life intentionally and with awareness. Now, let me tell you about my weekend routine, because I've actually found that my weekends are quite different from my weekdays, and I've learned to protect this time and structure it in a way that feels restorative and enjoyable. On Saturday mornings, I actually allow myself to sleep in a bit later than my weekday schedule, and I'll set my alarm for around 7:30 or 8 o'clock rather than 6:45, and this extra sleep feels incredibly luxurious and restorative. I still follow a similar morning routine in terms of stretching and gratitude and washing up, but I move through it more slowly and mindfully without any pressure to get ready quickly for work. My Saturday breakfast is often something a bit more elaborate than my weekday breakfasts, and I might make pancakes or a veggie-filled omelet or French toast, and I'll sit down and enjoy this breakfast slowly without rushing. After breakfast, I might spend some time on tasks that I haven't had time for during the week, like deep cleaning my apartment or doing laundry or organizing closets. And I find that getting these tasks done helps me feel more settled and organized for the week ahead. By mid-morning on Saturday, I often meet up with friends for coffee or to do an activity together. And I really value these face-to-face connections because they're nourishing for my social and emotional well-being. We might go for a walk in a local park, which gives us a chance to move our bodies while we're catching up and talking. Or we might visit a farmer's market or a local coffee shop, and these activities feel much more leisurely and enjoyable than my weekday activities. I'm also someone who really enjoys spending time alone on weekends, doing things that bring me joy, like visiting a museum or going to a movie or spending time in a bookstore. And I've learned that protecting solo time for these activities is just as important as social time. If I'm visiting a museum, I like to move through it at my own pace, spending time with pieces of art that really resonate with me rather than rushing through everything. And I find that museums are such interesting and inspiring spaces that always leave me feeling more creative and engaged. On Saturday afternoons, I often do some meal preparation for the upcoming week, and I'll prepare several components of meals that I can mix and match throughout the week, like roasted vegetables and cooked grains and proteins that I can combine into different meals. This meal prep process actually feels enjoyable to me because it's creative and it allows me to be thoughtful about the nutrition I'm going to be eating throughout the week, and I often put on music or a podcast while I'm doing this task. Saturday evening is a time when I might go out for dinner with friends or a partner, and I really enjoy the experience of eating food prepared by professional chefs and enjoying a meal in a restaurant setting rather than at home. The restaurant experience feels special and different from my normal routine, and I enjoy getting dressed up a bit and going out into the world and experiencing what the city or town has to offer in terms of dining and entertainment. If I'm not going out, I might prepare a slightly more elaborate dinner at home than I normally do. Maybe something I've been wanting to try or a recipe I've been saving to attempt, and I'll treat it like a special meal even though I'm still at home. Saturday evenings are also a time when I might socialize more. either by going out with friends or by having friends or family over to my apartment. And I enjoy having people in my space and creating a warm, welcoming environment for them. I might serve drinks and snacks or prepare a full meal, and I find that hosting people brings me joy and allows me to express my creativity in how I set the table and prepare the space and select the food and beverages. In the later part of Saturday evening, I still follow a wind-down routine similar to my weekdays because I've found that consistent sleep patterns actually help me feel better overall, even if I'm not working the next day. I might stay up a bit later than my typical weekday bedtime, perhaps until 11 or 11:30, but I still try to maintain a somewhat consistent sleep schedule because my body really responds well to routine. I might watch a movie or a couple of episodes of a television series, and I'll do this from my couch with comfortable blankets and snacks, and it feels like a treat to have time to relax in this way without worrying about waking up early for work. By around 11, I'm getting ready for bed and following my evening hygiene routine, and I'm heading to bed at a reasonable time so that I have time on Sunday morning to sleep in a bit if I want to. Sunday mornings are my favorite mornings of the week because I often don't have an alarm going off, and I wake up naturally without being jolted awake by a loud noise, and this feels so much gentler and more pleasant than weekday mornings. I might stay in bed for a little while after waking, just thinking about my day and how I want to spend it. And I give myself permission to be slow and relaxed on Sunday mornings without any pressure to get moving quickly. My Sunday breakfast is often leisurely and elaborate, and I might make something like a full breakfast spread with eggs and bacon and toast and fresh fruit, and I'll sit at my table with a cup of coffee and maybe the newspaper or a magazine. I take time on Sunday mornings to think about my week ahead and to mentally prepare myself for the week to come, and I might write down any important dates or deadlines or things I want to remember. The bulk of my Sunday is usually dedicated to meal planning and meal preparation for the week, and I found that spending a couple of hours on Sunday doing this task actually saves me so much time and mental energy during my busy weekdays. I'll sit down with the calendar and I'll think about what I want to eat for lunch each day of the week, and I'll make a shopping list of ingredients that I need to purchase. I'll do my grocery shopping either online or by going to the store, and I find that shopping with a list rather than wandering around aimlessly helps me make healthier choices and spend less money. When I return home with my groceries, I'll spend a couple of hours preparing various components of meals, like chopping and roasting vegetables, cooking grains, preparing proteins, and making any sauces or dressings that I can store in the fridge. By the end of this process, I have containers of food in my refrigerator that I can mix and match throughout the week, and this preparation takes a lot of the stress out of my weekdays because I'm not trying to figure out what to eat when I'm tired and hungry. I also take time on Sunday to plan my week in other ways, like thinking about what I want to accomplish and setting goals for myself, and I create a master to-do list that I can break down into daily tasks. On Sunday afternoons, I often do some of the household tasks that I didn't get to during the week, like more thorough cleaning or laundry or organizing specific areas of my apartment. I find that doing these tasks on Sunday allows me to start the week with a clean and organized space, which really does improve my mental state and makes it easier for me to focus on work and personal projects during the week. I might also spend time on hobbies or creative pursuits that I didn't get to during the week, and I give myself permission to spend a couple of hours on these things without feeling like I'm being unproductive. I might work on a longer art project, or read several chapters of my book, or practice some skill that I'm trying to develop. And Sunday afternoon feels like the perfect time for these pursuits because I'm not pressured by a work schedule. Sometimes I'll visit a local park or nature area on Sunday afternoon if the weather is nice, and I'll take a walk and spend some time in nature. And I find that this exposure to the natural world is so grounding and calming for my nervous system. By Sunday evening, I'm starting to transition back into weekday mode, and I'm getting myself mentally prepared for the week ahead. And I find that this transition period is important for setting myself up for success. I might lay out my work clothes for the first couple of days of the week, and I'll review my calendar to remind myself of any important meetings or deadlines that are coming up. I'll also do a final check of my apartment to make sure it's tidy and organized and ready for me to leave the next morning, and I'll prepare my lunch for Monday and make sure my work bag is packed with everything I need. I'm also intentional about what I want to prioritize in the week ahead, and I might set a specific goal like, I want to complete this project by Wednesday, or I want to exercise at least 3 times this week, or I want to call my family member on Thursday. These intentions help guide my week and give me a sense of direction and purpose, and I find that starting the week with clear intentions makes me feel more motivated and focused. On Sunday evening, I'm still maintaining a reasonable bedtime so that I'm not completely exhausted when Monday morning comes, and I find that a good night of sleep on Sunday night sets me up well for the week ahead. I follow my regular evening wind-down routine, and I might spend an hour reading or listening to music or doing some light stretching, and I'm consciously releasing any stress or worry about the week ahead. I use some calming techniques like deep breathing or meditation, and I remind myself that I'm capable and resourceful and that I can handle whatever the week brings. And this positive self-talk is really important for my mental health. By about 10 o'clock on Sunday night, I'm getting ready for bed, and I'm allowing myself to feel excited about the week ahead rather than anxious, and I'm falling asleep with a sense of anticipation and readiness. So now that I've walked you through my entire day and my weekend, I want to talk about some of the deeper insights I've gained about routines and habits and why they matter so much in our lives. I've learned that a routine is not something restrictive that limits your freedom. It's actually something that creates freedom because it removes the need to make constant decisions about basic tasks, and it allows your brain to focus on things that matter more. When you have a consistent morning routine, you're not wasting mental energy trying to figure out what to do next, and this frees up your cognitive resources for more important thinking and creative problem solving. I've also learned that building good habits is not about willpower or motivation. It's about making the behavior as easy as possible and embedding it into your environment and your daily structure. For example, I don't wake up each morning and tell myself that I'm going to be grateful and stretch and drink lemon water through sheer willpower. Instead, I've set up my environment and my routine so that these behaviors are the easy default. My water bottle is in my bathroom so that I can't help but see it when I wake up. My yoga mat is rolled out on my floor so that it's easy to do stretches. And I've practiced gratitude so many times that it's become automatic. I think what's been most important for me in developing my daily routine is learning to be intentional about every aspect of my life, from the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep. And this intentionality has genuinely transformed my quality of life. Being intentional means making conscious choices about how I spend my time and energy and what I'm going to prioritize, rather than just defaulting to autopilot or doing things because I think I should or because everyone else is doing them. It means regularly checking in with myself and asking questions like, is this activity serving me right now? And does this align with my values? And how do I actually want to spend this time, rather than just going through the motions? It also means being willing to challenge habits that aren't serving me, even if they're comfortable or familiar, and being open to trying new approaches and seeing what actually works for me rather than what works for someone else. I've found that this intentional approach has made my daily life feel so much more meaningful and satisfying, and I feel like I'm actively participating in the creation of my life rather than just letting it happen to me. Self-care is something I've become really passionate about, and I think that self-care is not about bubble baths and face masks, though those can certainly be nice. Self-care is about consistently taking care of yourself in ways that support your physical, mental, and emotional health. For me, self-care looks like drinking enough water throughout the day and eating nutritious food that makes my body feel good. And it looks like moving my body in ways that feel good to me and getting enough sleep. It looks like protecting my mental health by setting boundaries around my time and energy, and it looks like taking breaks when I need them and asking for help when I'm overwhelmed. It looks like engaging in activities that bring me joy and make me feel alive. And it looks like connecting with people who matter to me and nurturing those relationships. It also looks like being kind to myself when I make mistakes or don't stick to my routines perfectly. And it looks like acknowledging that my needs are valid and worthy of care and attention. I've noticed that when I prioritize self-care consistently, I'm a better friend, a better colleague, and a better person overall because I'm coming to my interactions and responsibilities from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Another thing that's become really important to me is practicing mindfulness and presence in my daily life. And by mindfulness, I mean the practice of being fully present and aware in each moment, rather than being lost in thoughts about the past or the future. When I'm eating, I'm actually tasting the food rather than eating on autopilot. And when I'm walking, I'm noticing the sights and sounds around me rather than being lost in my own thoughts. And when I'm talking to someone, I'm actually listening rather than planning what I'm going to say next. I found that these simple practices of presence have genuinely increased my enjoyment and satisfaction with my life because I'm actually experiencing my life rather than just moving through it. Mindfulness also helps me notice when I'm stressed or anxious, and it allows me to respond to these feelings in a helpful way rather than ignoring them until they build up to overwhelming levels. I practice mindfulness through formal meditation, which I try to do for about 10 minutes each morning, and I also practice informal mindfulness throughout the day in moments like waiting for the bus or taking a shower. I also want to emphasize that while I do have a fairly structured routine, I also try to maintain flexibility and allow room for spontaneity and changes because I've learned that rigidity can be just as problematic as total chaos. There are days when I wake up and I just don't feel like my normal routine. Maybe I'm more tired than usual or I'm feeling emotionally heavy, and I give myself permission to adjust my routine to meet my needs on that particular day. Maybe instead of exercising, I'll spend extra time resting. Or maybe instead of meal prepping on Sunday, I'll just cook simpler meals during the week. And I've learned that this flexibility actually helps me maintain my routine in the long run because I'm not setting myself up for failure by being too rigid. I also stay open to try new things and adjusting my routine when I discover that something new actually works better for me than what I was doing before. And I don't get attached to doing things a certain way just because that's how I've always done them. I think the key is finding that balance between structure and flexibility, where you have enough routine to provide stability and direction, but you also maintain enough flexibility to adjust when needed and to allow for spontaneity and novelty. One thing I've noticed is that having a solid routine has actually made me more resilient and better able to handle stress and unexpected challenges. Because even when other things in my life are chaotic or difficult, I still have these anchors of routine that keep me grounded. When I'm going through a difficult period, I lean on my routines even more because I know that these familiar patterns will help me feel more stable and less anxious. For example, if I'm dealing with something stressful at work, I might not want to go through my normal routine, but I know that taking care of myself through movement and good nutrition and sleep is exactly what I need to help me cope. I think routines function as scaffolding that holds us up during difficult times, and they provide a sense of normalcy and control when other things in our lives feel uncertain or out of control. I've also found that having a routine makes me more productive and more capable of achieving my goals because I'm not wasting time and energy trying to figure out what to do next or when to do things. I already have a structure in place. Another important aspect of my life is celebrating the small wins and accomplishments throughout my day, rather than only focusing on big achievements or goals. I might feel good about myself for drinking enough water that day, or for completing an exercise class, or for having a productive meeting at work, or for cooking a healthy meal for myself. These small daily wins add up over time, and I've found that recognizing and celebrating these accomplishments helps me feel more motivated and positive about my life overall. I often practice this by keeping a small list of wins at the end of each day, and it's interesting to reflect on how many things I actually did accomplish, even when a day feels like it wasn't particularly productive or special. This practice has been really helpful for my mental health and self-esteem because it helps me focus on what I did accomplish rather than what I didn't get to or what went wrong. My daily routine and habits also include practices that support my relationships and connection with other people because I believe that social connection is absolutely fundamental to our well-being and happiness. I make sure to check in with important people in my life regularly, whether that's through phone calls or text messages or in-person meetings, and I protect time in my schedule for these connections. When I'm with people I care about, I try to be fully present and engaged, rather than being distracted by my phone or my own thoughts, and I think this presence is one of the greatest gifts I can give to someone. I also try to be intentional about being kind and generous with people, whether that's through small gestures like bringing someone coffee or larger gestures like helping a friend through a difficult time. Building a life filled with strong relationships and connection actually takes intention and practice and consistent effort, and it's not something that happens automatically just by living our daily lives. My routine also includes time for growth and learning because I believe that continuing to learn and challenge myself is essential to feeling engaged and fulfilled in life. I might listen to podcasts that teach me something new, or read books that expand my perspective, or take an online course in something I'm interested in, and I dedicate time to these learning activities because they're important to me. Learning doesn't have to be formal or structured. I also learn by trying new recipes and observing how they turn out, or trying new activities and noticing what I enjoy, or having conversations with people who have different perspectives than me. I've noticed that when I'm actively learning and growing, I feel more energized and more engaged with my life, and I'm less likely to feel bored or stuck in a rut. Growth is also not linear, and there are times when I'm learning a lot and times when I'm just consolidating what I've already learned, and I've learned to be patient with myself during both phases. Physical wellness is something that I've become increasingly aware of as I've gotten older, and I've learned that taking care of my body is one of the best investments I can make in my overall quality of life. I try to move my body in some way every day, whether that's through a formal exercise class or just through daily movement, like walking or stretching or dancing, and I found that regular movement has huge benefits for both my physical and mental health. I also prioritize good nutrition, and I try to eat mostly whole foods that are nourishing to my body, while also allowing myself flexibility and enjoyment in what I eat. I stay hydrated throughout the day because I've learned that even mild dehydration can affect my energy levels and mood, and I keep a water bottle with me to remind myself to drink regularly. I also prioritize good sleep, and I've created an environment and routine that supports restful sleep because I've noticed the dramatic difference in my well-being when I'm sleeping well versus when I'm sleep deprived. I've also learned that emotional health is just as important as physical health, and I've developed practices that help me manage my emotions and maintain my mental health. I practice journaling regularly, which allows me to process my thoughts and feelings and get them out of my head and onto paper. And I find that this helps me gain clarity about what I'm experiencing. I also practice meditation and breathing exercises, which help me calm my nervous system and reduce anxiety and stress. And I've noticed that these practices are especially helpful during difficult periods. I allow myself to feel my emotions fully, rather than pushing them away or trying to distract myself, because I've learned that emotions that are suppressed or ignored tend to build up and create problems. I also talk to people I trust about how I'm feeling, and I'm not afraid to ask for support or help when I need it, because I've learned that reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness. Time management is something that I've had to intentionally work on because I used to try to do everything and felt constantly overwhelmed and behind, and I've had to learn to be more selective about what I'm going to focus on. I try to focus on what's most important and to eliminate or delegate or defer things that are less important, and this requires regularly evaluating my commitments and my time. I also try to protect time for things that matter to me, like hobbies and relationships and rest, rather than letting these things get squeezed out by work and obligations. I've learned that saying no to some things is necessary if I want to say yes to the things that truly matter. And I've become more comfortable with disappointing people or not meeting every expectation if it means maintaining my own well-being. I also try to batch similar tasks together, like answering emails or running errands, because I found that this is more efficient than jumping between different types of tasks throughout the day. Financial wellness is another area where I've become more intentional, and I've learned that managing my money well actually reduces my stress and anxiety and gives me more freedom and choices in my life. I try to spend money in a way that aligns with my values, which means I might spend more on things that are important to me, like good food or experiences with friends, and less on things that don't really matter to me. I also try to save money regularly, even if it's a small amount, because I've learned that having savings provides a sense of security and allows me to handle unexpected expenses without going into debt. I track my spending so that I have a clear picture of where my money is going, and this awareness helps me make more intentional choices about how I spend my money. Financial wellness is not about being rich. It's about being intentional and conscious about how you use your financial resources to support the life you want to live. I've also learned that the physical environment I'm in has a huge impact on my mood, productivity, and overall well-being. And I've become more intentional about creating spaces that feel good to me. My home is organized and clean, which helps me feel calm and peaceful when I'm there, and I've invested in things like good lighting and comfortable furniture that make my space more enjoyable to spend time in. I also have plants in my apartment, which I find to be beautiful and also help with air quality, and I find that being around living things is comforting to me. I create small pockets of beauty in my space, like a corner where I keep things that bring me joy, or arranging my books in a way that looks appealing, and these small touches make my space feel more like my own. I also try to keep my workspace at work organized and personalized, with a few pictures or plants that make it feel more welcoming and less sterile. Ultimately, what ties all of these routines and habits together is a sense of purpose and meaning. And I believe that living a fulfilling life is about understanding what matters to you and structuring your days in a way that reflects and supports those values. For me, what matters is my health and well-being, my relationships and connections with people, my growth in learning, my creative expression, and my ability to live authentically and true to myself. My daily routine is designed to support these values, and when I'm living in alignment with my values, I feel much more fulfilled and satisfied with my life. I think that's what's been most transformative for me. Not just the specific routines or habits, but understanding what they're in service of and making sure that my daily life is aligned with what actually matters to me. Of course, I want to be honest and say that maintaining this kind of intentional routine is not always easy, and there are definitely days when I struggle to stick to my routines or when life just doesn't go according to plan. There are days when I don't feel like exercising, or I want to sleep in and skip my morning routine, or I feel overwhelmed and want to just collapse on the couch and ignore everything. And I think it's important to acknowledge that these feelings are normal. I've learned to be compassionate with myself on these difficult days, and I give myself permission to adjust my expectations or my routine as needed, knowing that getting back on track tomorrow is always possible. I've also learned that perfectionism is the enemy of consistency, and I'm much more likely to maintain my routines in the long run if I allow for imperfection and flexibility rather than expecting myself to do everything perfectly every single day. There have also been times when I've gone through periods where my routine completely fell apart due to circumstances beyond my control, like illness or major life changes. And I've learned that it's possible to rebuild my routine and get back on track after these disruptions. As I've mentioned, I've become much better at adapting my routine based on my changing needs and circumstances. And I regularly assess whether my current routine is still serving me or if something needs to change. For example, I used to wake up very early and exercise first thing in the morning, but I've realized that I actually enjoy exercising in the evening more and I have more energy for it then, so I've adjusted my routine to reflect that. I also adjust my routine seasonally because my needs and what I feel like doing actually change throughout the year based on factors like daylight and weather and the particular season of life I'm in. I'm also open to trying new practices and seeing if they might be beneficial for me. And if something new doesn't work, I'm not afraid to go back to what was working before. This flexibility and willingness to adapt is actually what makes it possible for me to maintain my routines in the long run, because I'm not rigidly stuck in patterns that stop serving me. I get asked a lot about motivation, and specifically how I motivate myself to stick to my routines when I don't feel like doing them. And honestly, I think motivation is a bit overrated. I try not to rely on motivation because motivation is inconsistent and can disappear at any time. And instead, I rely on habit and systems and making the desired behavior as easy as possible. When I don't feel like exercising, I don't wait for motivation to appear. I just put on my exercise clothes and do a small amount of movement, and often, once I've started, I find the motivation to continue. I also use external accountability to help keep me on track, like telling a friend about my goals or joining a class that I've committed to financially. And knowing that someone else is counting on me or that I'll lose money helps motivate me in a way that pure willpower doesn't. I also remind myself of the reasons why I do these routines and the benefits I get from them. And when I'm feeling unmotivated, I think about how much better I feel when I'm taking care of myself. And that reminder is often enough to get me moving. I've also learned that having support from other people makes it so much easier to maintain routines and work towards goals, and I've deliberately cultivated a community of people who share my values and are working on similar things. I have friends who also prioritize fitness and health, so we exercise together sometimes, which makes it more enjoyable and helps keep me accountable. I have friends who are also interested in personal growth and reading, so we discuss books and ideas together, which helps me stay engaged with my learning. I have colleagues who understand the importance of work-life balance, so we support each other in maintaining boundaries and taking breaks, which helps all of us feel less isolated in our efforts. Having people around me who are supportive and who understand my values has been invaluable in helping me maintain my routines and achieve my goals, and I'm trying to be that support for others as well. If I eventually have children or if my family situation changes, I know that my routines will have to adapt significantly, and I think it's important to acknowledge that different life circumstances call for different routines. But I also believe that the underlying principles of intention and self-care and prioritization will still apply, and I'll still find ways to care for myself and maintain the things that matter to me, even if the specific practices change. I've observed people with children who have found ways to maintain aspects of their self-care and wellness practices, like exercising with their kids or reading while their kids play. And this inspires me to believe that no matter what my life circumstances are, I can find ways to live intentionally. I think it's also important to acknowledge that different seasons of life call for different rhythms and routines, and what works for me now might not work for me in 5 or 10 years, and I try to stay open and flexible to how my needs and preferences might change. In my 20s, my routines were different than they are in my 30s, and I expect they'll change again as I move into different decades. And I try to see these changes as natural evolution rather than failure. I'm also conscious of where I am in my career and my personal development, and I try to structure my routines in a way that supports where I'm trying to grow and develop right now. I've also started thinking about what kind of impact I want to have in the world. And while my daily routine might seem personal and individualistic, I believe that taking care of myself and living intentionally actually ripples out and has an impact on the people around me. When I'm well-rested and well-nourished and taking care of my mental health, I'm a better friend, a better colleague, and a better person in general, and I'm more capable of showing up for the people I care about. When I'm living in alignment with my values, I'm more authentic and more honest, and this gives people permission to be more authentic as well. I also hope that by sharing my routines and habits, I might inspire people to think more intentionally about their own lives and to make changes that support their well-being and happiness. I believe that small daily actions add up to create a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling, and I want to encourage people to invest in these small daily actions rather than waiting for some future moment when they'll finally have time to take care of themselves. For anyone listening who wants to develop more intentional routines, here are some practical tips that have worked for me. First, start small and focus on building 1 or 2 habits at a time, rather than trying to overhaul your entire life at once, because this increases the likelihood that you'll actually stick with the changes. Second, identify your why, which is understanding why this routine or habit matters to you and how it supports your values and goals. And this understanding will help motivate you to maintain the behavior. Third, make the behavior as easy as possible by setting up your environment to support the behavior, like laying out your exercise clothes the night before or keeping your water bottle in a visible place. Fourth, track your progress and celebrate small wins, because seeing evidence of your progress, even in small ways, is motivating and helps you maintain momentum. Fifth, be patient and compassionate with yourself when you mess up or have a day where you don't stick to your routine, because one day off doesn't undo all your progress, and you can always start again the next day. As I reflect on my own journey with routines and habits, I'm struck by how much has changed in my life as a result of becoming more intentional and deliberate about how I spend my time and energy. I feel more at peace, more satisfied, and more in control of my life than I used to. And while I still face challenges and difficulties, I feel much better equipped to handle them because I have these routines and habits that ground me. I also feel more authentically myself because I'm making choices that align with my values rather than just doing what I think I should do or what everyone else is doing. And I feel more hopeful about the future because I understand that my life is not determined by circumstances or luck, but by the small daily choices I make and the routines I've built. So my invitation to you, dear listener, is to think about your own daily routine and habits and to consider whether they're serving you and supporting the life you actually want to live. If they're not, I encourage you to experiment with making small changes and see what impact those changes have on your life. And I promise you that even small changes can create significant shifts in how you feel and who you are. Remember that it's never too late to start building better routines or to make changes in your life, and that the time you invest in yourself and your well-being is never wasted. Be patient with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself and celebrate the small steps you're taking towards living more intentionally and authentically. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, listening to my story and learning about my daily routines and the practices that support my well-being. I hope that something I've shared has resonated with you or inspired you to think differently about your own life and routines. I'd love to hear from you if you have questions or if you want to share your own routines and habits. And you can reach out to me on social media or through the podcast website. I'll be back next week with another episode where we dive deeper into different aspects of living intentionally and creating the life you want to live. Until then, I encourage you to notice your own routines and habits, to think about whether they're serving you, and to be willing to make changes that support your well-being and happiness. Thank you for listening to Living with Lilly, and I'll talk to you next video.